Welcome to the Jesus Over Everything podcast, connecting the power of God's Word to everyday life.
Well, welcome to the Jesus Over Everything podcast. My name is Nathan Avellan. I'm one of the pastors at Resurrection Church, and today I'm here with Rodrigo Puebla. He is the director of a ministry called Campus Outreach, and you're the director of Campus Outreach Monterrey.
Yes.
Right? Well, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Okay, so tell us a little bit about you. Where did you grow up? How did you find Jesus? Testimony of salvation. And then we'll talk a little bit about Campus Outreach.
Perfect. Yeah. So again, my name is Rodrigo Puebla. So if you cannot roll your R, that's fine. But that's how you're supposed to pronounce it, at least. I'm born and raised in the city of Monterrey, in Mexico, a city that is around three hours near the border of Texas. It's the second largest metro area in Mexico, second largest city metro area. So yeah, I was born and raised there. Every time I share my testimony, I like to start with a fun fact that actually taps into my testimony. I'm the first quadruplet to be born in the city of Monterrey.
What?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I was in the newspaper and everything.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm a quadruplet. However, sadly, one of them died when he was a day old. He was very little. But yeah, we were technically the first quadruplets. We're now triplets. I think you know my brother and sister. I don't know.
I don't think I've met them.
No?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so.
Yeah, but
By
yeah.
the way, Rodrigo, you can move this.
Oh.
I know you're trying to be nice. You can move. David moves it all the time as much as you want. So you can move this as much as you want to your heart's desire.
Perfect.
And then up and down and all this. Yeah.
Great.
Our brother Trevor Baker has done an amazing job with this setup. Right. So no, I don't think I met. So one sister, one brother.
Yeah. One sister, one brother, and the other one he was a man too. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So first quadruplet to be born. My mom had us, and then a month after I was born, my dad passed away.
Oh.
So my mom was a widow with 3 kids,
Wow.
just newborn. And so at that time, my uncle, his brother, he came and lived with us. Kind of how to have a family, like a father figure in the house.
Mm-hmm.
So he came and lived with us, and it just happened that he was the only Christian in the family of my mom.
All right.
And my mom, like most Mexicans, was born into a Catholic family.
Yep.
I was baptized as a Catholic baby, but to be Catholic in many ways for a lot of Mexicans does not mean much. It's a very traditional thing. It's a cultural thing. To be Mexican is to be Catholic.
Right.
But it didn't mean much. And so in my case, it was similar. My mom never went to mass. We didn't even have a relationship, like other than with my grandparents. They go to mass, and that was it. But my uncle was the only Christian in the family. And he asked my mom when we were about probably 5-6 years old. He asked her, "Do you mind if I take your kids with me to church?" And my mom was like, I don't know, maybe she was like, yeah, take them like an hour or two. That's perfect. I don't know. No, she said that, like she told him, I think it will be good for them to have a religion and that'll be nice. So I think I have probably a different story than most Mexicans in that even though I was born into a Catholic church, I was actually raised in a Christian church, an evangelical church. However, I identify a lot with a lot of Americans that I have gotten to know in that a lot of the times it's like, yeah, you know what, my testimony is that I was raised in the church, but actually I didn't understand the gospel until later in life. And that was my case. I was raised in a church, and some of them were pretty solid, pretty good. They taught me well. I just didn't know the gospel, I didn't understand the gospel. That happened until my college years. Now, to give you some background, I was a very good behaved kid. I was, straight A's. I was doing great in school. Never gotten drunk. never even smoke a cigar, anything, you know. And it's funny because I used to play like guitar, you know, it's like with bands and all of that. So it's like you would imagine like this kid is like crazy, you know. You know the music world, you just can get pretty crazy. But no, I was very, very, very a good moral kid because I was a Christian and I had morals and I was not like the rest of my friends, and that was my identity. And so growing up, I thought myself a Christian. I thought I knew some of the right doctrines, but it wasn't until I was 19 years old that the Lord changed my life. And there's a lot of things that happen. But it's funny. I kind of overheard a little bit of your talk with Luis. I don't know which one is gonna come first.
I have no idea.
So if you haven't heard that, go listen to that. And it hasn't come. Well,
at some point there will be 2 episodes, one with Luis Gallardo and one with Rodrigo Puebla.
Perfect. Yeah, and Luis is a great friend of mine, and so it's funny when I was here and I was like, I've heard his testimony before, but there was one part I was like, it's crazy how similar we are, because in my testimony. You know, growing up as a Christian, there was a lot of things in my life at that time that weren't going pretty well. But there were 2 that I was living for. One of them was my job. I was an accountant, which I still don't know why I choose to be an accountant. I don't think any accountant knows why. I don't never met an accountant. I was like, man, I was so passionate about this when I was a kid. But yeah, so I was an accountant. But I was doing pretty good, you know, financially. I had, you know, I had already had a job when I was in college, a pretty good job, and then I was trying to pursue this girl, you know, and so I was like, man, I had these 2 things in my life that are going great, you know, and those 2 were my idols. They were my God in essence. And so one part of the story is, you know, is like something things didn't work out with this girl, and that crushed me. But that taught me something. That taught me where my real God was.
Right.
And then at that time there was kind of like what you would call it here, like a youth pastor, a college pastor.
A youth pastor.
And he was starting to take interest in me and sharing the gospel and disciple me. I didn't know it at the time, but that's what he was doing with me. And so he started sharing the gospel with me. He started just being closer to me, reading the Bible. And one time I was in his office and he had a book. It's a book from John Piper. It's called Let the Nations Be Glad, which is about missions.
Yep.
And I pick it up and I told him like, oh, I don't know, maybe I just like the cover. I don't know. But I was like, hey, what's this book about? And he was like, it's about missions. And he's like, do you want to read it? And I was like, sure. I don't know why. I just wanted to read it. And so I started reading it. And in that book, one day, this is when I was again 19 in college. I used to work all day and then study at night. But I always had like what is like an hour break before getting into a classroom. So I was in my car waiting for the class and I started reading. And I was reading that book. And at one point, John Piper asked these questions. This question, he says, so imagine hypothetically that you die today. And you die and you go to heaven and it's perfect. It's great. It's what you thought. Your family's there. Your friends are there. No sin. Everything's awesome. Nothing, no suffering. But there's just one thing that's not there, or better said, one person that is not there. It's Jesus. Jesus is not in heaven. Would you like to go there? And I remember reading that and my Christian instinct kick in, you know, which was no. That's not the right answer. You know, like you said no. But it didn't last long. It lasted for a few seconds. And I was there by myself with God, reading my book, just me and him. And I said, man, who am I kidding? I would like to go to that place. Yes, Jesus is not there. That's sad. But it sounds better than hell. And it's not that bad, you know.
Right.
And I remember that was the first time I understood my sin. Because before, you know, I compared myself to other people and I was a pretty good kid, you know, and I did everything right. But at that time, I saw that my sin is the sin that is beneath the sin, which is I just didn't love Jesus. That's my sin. I didn't love Jesus. I grew up all my life hearing about him, but I just don't love him. And I knew that because I knew what it was to pursue other gods. I knew what it was to pursue this relationship. I knew what it was to love my path in my career. And so at that time, the Lord broke me. I remember I was crying in my car and just thinking, man, like, I'm a sinner. But it was also the first time I saw this Jesus, this cross, this gospel that I've heard all my life became a reality. Like, it's the first time I understood. And even though I don't love him as I should, he loves me and he's offering me his love. And I was like, man, like, that's the cross, that's the gospel, you know? And I think at that moment I didn't know, but looking back, I that's the moment I can at least point down and say, man, I think that's when I became a Christian. Because right after that, some things start to happen that haven't happened before. One of them being, I just had hunger for the word. I just wanted to devour, God's word. I start sharing with my friends. Like I start sharing the gospel with my friends. I've never barely ever spoke about, my faith with them. And I was like, man, like these guys need Jesus.
Right.
And I start seeing the world differently, my job, my friends, my everything, my family. And so, after that, the rest is history. But yeah, that's how I came to Christ.
That's a cool story. It's amazing. I don't know when these episodes are going to come and if they're going to come together, but today we are recording 2 podcasts, one with Pastor Luis Gallardo and one with Pastor Rodrigo, and they are planting a church together called Núcleo. And I just finished recording with Luis, and now we're recording with Rodrigo, and he told the same story of these. It's such an important question. I'm like, hey, would you like heaven with no Jesus? Like no suffering, no pain. Everything is great. People that you love are there, but Jesus not there. And it's a very thought-provoking question. And I think that it's a question that can lead you to find several of your idols in your heart if you really think about that question. All right, so you are the director of Campus Outreach in Monterrey. What is Campus Outreach?
Yeah, Campus Outreach is a ministry that exists to glorify God by building laborers on the campus for the lost world. So what we do is we go to campuses, both in the U.S., it started here, and in the whole world, and we share the gospel with students. We're a very evangelistic-driven ministry, so we try to go to the people that is not reached, that had never heard the gospel, and from 0 to maturity, we disciple them so that they can not only hear the gospel, but actually learn how to mature as believers and disciple and share with others. So that's what we do. That's what Campus Outreach does. And I happen to be the director in Monterrey, Mexico. Yeah.
All right. How many universities are you reaching?
Right now, we only have one.
You're working in one?
It was Monterrey Tech. Yes, we're pretty new-ish ministry.
In Monterrey?
In Monterrey, yes. We're pretty new. We started officially with a team as Campus Outreach usually does, and with a partnership with the church. We started in 2021. However, the story goes back ever since 2015.
Right.
So yeah, I can share more a little bit about that if you want.
Well, I was gonna. So first, I wanted you to explain what Campus Outreach is, right? So it's you've done that, and now so how did you get into Campus Outreach? How did it happen?
Yeah. All right. So became a Christian. And no, probably a year, maybe less, probably 6, 7, 8 months, I started having a high sense of calling to ministry. Okay. And at that time, the pastor that shared the gospel with me and discipled me, he took me in. I became an intern with him in his church planting. He confirmed my call alongside the elders. And at that time,
what church was this?
It's called Iglesia Cristiana del Sur. It was I don't know if you ever...
I don't think.
Yeah, Jaime Jimenez. You met Jaime. You know who, right?
Maybe I've met.
Yeah, he's in Houston now.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so he's the guy that discipled me, and so he went to seminary in the States, and so at that time I thought, okay, that's what you do. You have a call to ministry, and you go to seminary, right? And so I follow his steps. He went to a seminary called RTS, Reformed Theological Seminary in Jackson, Mississippi, and I applied. And they accepted me. They gave me a full scholarship, and I went there.
Right now, did you have to do the English exam? to go there?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you did the English exam. You passed it. First time?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Not to compare, but Luis just shared his story of not passing. So
Oh, that's a great story. Okay, I don't know why he shared that, but
well, I asked him.
but I believe that was God given.
Oh.
Like there's because I've been to RTS, I know the demands. I knew my English back then. His English is more than way better, like that I was, when I was at that time, and he's pretty good. I believe this was the Lord just leading him in. Like
He wanted him.
It's crazy. It's a crazy story. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you went to RTS in Jackson, Mississippi.
I went to RTS in Jackson, Mississippi. I did my MDiv there. It was a great time. It was a great time in my life. Coming from Monterrey to Jackson, Mississippi, it's like for those who are there, like love my time there, love the people in Jackson, Mississippi. It's hard to go from a metropolitan, city to a small city. So that was probably some challenging, but other than that, it was a great time. I made a lot of friends, and my professors were great professors, and I love my time there. But when I went, I always knew it was to come back. I had a heart for Mexico, for Monterrey, if specifically, and me going was to learn as much as I can, to get everything I can, but then to come back. And so when I was a year before graduating, I knew two things. One, again, like I knew where my heart and calling was, which was in Mexico, in Monterrey. And second, I knew that I wanted to work with college students. Or at least I have a sense that that's where the Lord was calling me.
Why college students? Since early desires to work with college students.
So normally, even in campus outreach, but in general, when you go to study seminary, it's usually after you do like campus ministry and things like that. So usually you do campus ministry when you graduate like a student, and then a few years, and then maybe you're like, man, I want to go become a pastor, so I need more training. And so they go to seminary, and most of my colleagues, and like at that time they were doing that. But I did it backwards. I like to say I did it backwards. I did seminary first and then went to campus ministry. And that's for a reason. In Mexico, around 80% of the population is Catholic, which sadly means that they don't know the gospel. And they don't know it because if you go to your average Catholic and you ask them, hey, do you know what the gospel is? They will say, is that Mark, Luke, John? That's the best answer most of them can give you.
Right.
If you ask them what grace is, they're going to say, I've heard the word. It sounds like gracias, It's not gracias. But what is it? It's like they don't have a concept of it. It's a very work-based religion. And so I go back and say, okay, there's 80% of the population here that is not reached. And then you look at the rest 10%, other religions or atheists. And then you left this group, evangelicals, which is 6 to 8%, is growing, but it's around that still. And not all of them, but a lot of them, they're not trying to reach the 80 and 90%. They're trying to reach the 6 and 8%, but not the 90%. Right. And so I'm like, there's something wrong here. There's something wrong. We should be reaching this population. This should be our calling. So ever since I left, I had a desire and a burn for evangelism, for a church that was focused on mission. But then the second aspect is I had a heart for discipleship. Everyone started to do discipleship as best as we can. But then I saw Jesus' ministry and what he did, and I was like, but he made it pretty clear. When he went and said to the disciples, go and make disciples, he never teach them, after that, he never said, okay, let me tell you the 5 steps of discipleship. They knew. And they knew because he spent 3 years with them doing it, right. And so they didn't have to question that. And so for me, it's like, man, we need to create also a culture of a church that knows how to walk alongside each other, in discipleship. So those were the 2 things that I, had.
Right.
And so to go and answer your questions, why did I go to college students? Is because going back, I had 2 options. Option A, go, to an established church and try to get there, it's like, get this vision there. That's pretty doable and noble. I just didn't think that was my calling because for me, I said, I just don't want to change the mind of the Christians that are here. I want to go from zero to the new generations of Christians that have never heard the gospel and get them this new DNA. This DNA that, is gospel-centered at a basic, but they
Right.
never knew a time where when someone was not walking with them and they were not being sent to be walk with someone
Right.
else.
Christians that know discipleship is important from the very, very beginning.
Yes. And then there's a crazy statistics I was sharing with y'all this morning. Y'all, this is my Mississippi, man. It's 80% of the population will make their decision about their spirituality and their faith, their most important life decisions, in the ages of 18 and 20. You know, before the age of 20, around that time,
Right.
and definitely before 35.
That's a crazy statistic.
And so for me, it's like, man, this is where they understand, and this is where this is the make or
moment.
break. This is the moment. And so
Yeah.
if I want to reach the next generation that are going to do that, I need to go to these
Right.
people. And at that time, very providentially, someone contacted me with Campus Outreach. Campus Outreach was not looking for me, and in a sense, I was not looking for them. But someone else put us in contact, and I went. This time it was in Indiana, pretty close to here, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty Indiana. And I saw the ministry there, and I always said, man, sometimes you go to like ministries and they show you like slides and great statistics and all that.
Yeah.
This is all good, but like they did not. They just introduced me to their people. They introduced me to the leaders, and they introduced me to the students. And I start talking with them, and I start realizing this student right here, a year and a half ago, did not know Jesus. And now he's discipling 4 men. What's going on? I've never seen that.
Right.
That was my vision. That was my dream, but I've never seen it like the way they were doing it. And so it took me a weekend to say, man, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do back home.
Nice.
And so that's what
So then you work mainly in this university called Tecnológico de Monterrey, right? Talk a little bit about Tecnológico. What is it? I think it's a fascinating story.
Man, tech is all right. So tech just became, as of a few weeks ago, officially the #1 ranked school in Monterrey, in Mexico. And is top 5 in Latin America. The guy who started tech, he was an MIT graduate, and he wanted to start the first MIT of Mexico and Latin America. So we're literally called Monterrey Institute of Technology. So it's MIT.
Right.
So you go to tech because you want to be the best engineer or businessman, finance, or entrepreneurship. That's what we're known for. Monterey Tech, especially our campus, it's actually non-commuter. Most of them are people flying over all over the country. They're what we call foráneos. It's like from out of state, and not only that, but they also are coming from Central and South America. And so to go to tech is, it's pretty much the highest you can go.
The highest you
in
can go,
Mexico.
yep.
And so I wish I could tell you that when I start going to tech is because I was a visionary, and I saw it and I was like, man, if we reach this campus, we can reach the country. It was not. It was because the guy who discipled me, he's a tech graduate.
Okay.
In the church that we were at, it's close to that campus. And he was like, man, he's the one to give me the vision. He's the one to tell me like, man, I think you should investigate into that. And so when I came back from seminary, I was in Campus Outreach. Because Campus Outreach, again, like I was just starting my relationship with them. And I said, I do want it to be Campus Outreach one day, but I cannot wait until like Campus Outreach starts, here to do something.
Right.
So what I did is I started by myself, and I started to go to tech, and I enrolled as a student.
Okay.
I enrolled as a student, to understand the in and out, because it's a gated school, it's a private school.
Right.
And at that time, it was 2 years of me laboring there, just going to campus, sharing, with students, until eventually, a few years down the road, officially Campus Outreach hired me, and they wanted to send a team. But going back to your original question, at tech is so important, because if we reach tech, you can reach anywhere.
Okay.
If you reach tech has a system where they have the same college in all over the country.
Right.
So you reach there and you can now go to Mexico City or Guadalajara or Puebla or other parts of Mexico. And so we're like, man, this is strategic. Second, we want to reach the next generation of leaders. My vision, like I've been telling, is I want to raise that new generation. But I'm not only trying to raise the new generation of, yes, like ministers and pastors, like that's, we need that, but also, family, households and businessmen and people in their work, and so tech students are probably going to be, either the next CEO or all of that, in their companies. And so reaching one of them is reaching someone that can potentially even bring some changes to that. So that excites us a lot. Again, I wish I could tell you that was the plan for the beginning. It's something that it just happened as we investigated more about this university. But yeah.
All right. And now you lead a team, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many people in your team?
We're about to be 8.
Okay.
8 of us. So two Mexicans, one Venezuelan American, and the rest are Americans.
Americans. All right. And so what do you do, like day in, day out? What's your routine?
Yeah. So the way I like to explain my job is I'm a pastor, but with all the fun, So now our job is actually is pretty fun. We go every day to campus. We go to campus. We either go to the cafeteria, the yard, the library, and we just try to meet people. However, one distinctive of Campus Outreach is that there's usually 2 ways of doing ministry. You either it's called like you build them, they come, and that's one way. But another way is you go where they are, and so that's Campus Outreach model. It's where are your students at? What are they doing? And that's where you go. And so that's why a lot of our job looks like I'm gonna go shoot hoops with this guy. I'm gonna go to play soccer with this guy.
Right.
I'm gonna start in a mural team, inside campus to meet students. And so that's how we meet students. We go to campus. The guys have this pretty much, figure it out, and they go to the basketball rec and they start playing basketball with the guys. And they're like, what do you do here? And it's like, well. They usually take a class, a class there, Spanish or something. I take a class, but they also say like, yeah, but we also work for a church. Okay, so we start a conversation and we start talking. In Mexico, and one thing we realize is for a Catholic to become a Christian, it usually is something that we do is we say like, you have to belong before you believe, which means because their Catholicism is cultural and traditional, it doesn't have much to do with doctrine. It's just not usually through just telling them the right things that makes them become a Christian. You can share the gospel pretty efficiently. And they're like, okay, yeah, it makes sense. And that's it. That's not, because again, for them, religion is something more cultural and traditional. Right. And so one thing we find out is to break down the barrier. And then there's also this, which I don't know you live in Mexico for a while, so you experience this where like, there's some resistance when you tell them you're a Christian and they're like, I'm a Catholic, That's what they said usually. And so to break that barrier that for them that to see that you're just not trying for them to stop being Catholics and become a Christian, but actually understand the gospel. It usually, it takes trust, it takes trust building. And so the way we trust build is by creating a community. A community of what Jesus says in John. The world will know that you're my disciples by the love that you have for each other. So that's the verse that we took as a team, and that's what we did. Okay. We said we're gonna be a community that love each other and that love other people. And as we're playing basketball with them, having a carne asada, a grill with them, we're loving them, we're serving them, and they're seeing our community. And they're gonna ask, "What is that?"
Right.
And we're gonna preach the gospel.
And then you're gonna preach the gospel.
And it's working because Jesus said it by the love that you have for each other. The word.
Right. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, this part of you belong before you believe, and I think there's some caveats that you can put. Obviously, they're not becoming members of the church.
Yeah.
Right. That's not what you mean by belong.
Yeah.
You mean they can be your friends and build relationships and be loved. Right, as you try to preach the gospel and explain the differences between different religions and things like that, right? Yeah.
And we have had people come to Christ, and I would say 8 out of 10 they were just part of the community first, And again, by the community, like you're right, like it's not necessarily like the church members. Right. But what I mean is everything we're doing, it's like from going to watch a movie at someone else's house, even our events, because we do monthly events where we call it nuclear nights, where we invite people. We're to give like evangelistic talks, but even that, like it's always geared towards like, man, this is our community. Come experience it, and and then hear the gospel.
Right. That is awesome. Did you ever consider a different city or a different university, or was Tech Monterrey?
Never like seriously, never like in a, oh man, should I, it's like 50-50. Yeah. No, not really. But now that we're growing, thank God, like now I'm considering like, okay, not right now, but in a few years.
What's the next step?
What's the next step?
Right.
Like, there's Mexico City has been asking Campus Outreach for a few years now. Hey, we want this. We want some team here. And so they're like, we would love to help you.
Yeah, that would be really helpful.
Who's gonna go?
Right.
And so now we're like, we're not there right now, but we want to be there. We want to be there in a few years. We want to raise leaders and send them to Mexico City, and start a Campus Outreach there.
Right.
So yeah.
All right. Awesome. Hey, tell us a little bit about your experience. So, born and raised in Mexico, and then all of a sudden, so RTS Jackson, Mississippi. That's the first time you lived in the United States, right? How was that? How was the experience? Culture shock, language.
Yeah, language, man. Whew. You can understand Southern language. In Southern Mississippi, you can understand anything. Yeah. I keep saying, man, I love Midwesterners. They just have the most neutral accent.
Yeah.
It's so easy to understand. But Southerners, yeah. So that was definitely a challenge. Obviously, understanding the language. When I became a Christian, I started reading a lot of books. I always like to read, have always liked to read. And so I started reading and hearing like a lot of sermons in English, John Piper, Tim Keller, those guys. And reading a lot of them, C.S. Lewis. And so by the time I go to seminary a year after, I was reading a little bit of those, but I've never read like the guys that you read in seminary.
The books that
the Dutch guys that were translating to English, and now as Mexican is reading this.
Right. Those, when there's like 3-4 languages involved, there was some moments in seminary when I thought, what are we doing? Because I was reading Hebrew, and then I was doing my homework. So I'm translating Hebrew into English with my Spanish mind. But of course I needed to translate to English because I'm studying at an English institution, right? So I'm like, what is this? Right? Yeah. So what other cultural shocks?
Food-wise. Food-wise was a cultural shock. I mean, the food in the South, is good. It's not bad, but like it's Mexican food, and so like being used to that. So that was a culture shock. Relationally, that was probably the most cultural shock. The South is, they're known for the Southern hospitality and all that, and that's true. That's the Southern hospitality, but when you compare it to Mexico or like any other Latin American country, I was like, it's completely night and day.
Right.
And so, yeah, just realizing, man, like, I'm in a city and in a culture that, it's not my culture. And so I got to understand it and I got to be part of it. And so, it's the challenges that come with that. So that was definitely one, but the Lord provided friends. The Lord provided, a community while I was there. But it was definitely challenging. That was definitely a challenging aspect.
Right. One of the things that I admire about Campus Outreach, it's some of these ministries, especially college ministries, but many other ministries that do not belong to a particular local church, right? They can become very independent from the local church, right? Para-church, that we will call them, right? And it's like, no, we do our own things. And for some people, they even become the church, this ministry, right? But Campus Outreach is very tied, and it gives the local church a lot of importance, right? Yeah. So like, in what church all of your teams are members, and if someone believes the gospel and becomes a Christian, you're gonna send them to a local church right away. How explain a little bit of that, because I think it's an amazing aspect.
So that's one of the reasons I decided to go to Campus Outreach and not other ministries. Other ministries are pretty good too. It's just this was an aspect that I had a heart for, and is when I was going back to Mexico, my heart is for the church. Jesus said is the church, that the gates of hell will not prevail against her. And Campus Outreach is part of the church. It's an arm of the church, but it's not the church. It's a part of it. And so for me, Campus Outreach or any other ministry, it always must be under the authority of the local church, because that's what Jesus established. When I found our Campus Outreach, and not only do I see that they're doing this missional ministry that I was looking for, but also they have an ecclesiology of we are under the authority of a local church. Every campus outreach that we plant is under the authority of a local church. I was like, this is it. This is what I want. Because again, my vision about going back home is I want to help the movement of the church here.
Right.
You know, and so in 2015, it's a funny story. In 2015, I was invited to this. It's called Summer Projects Campus Outreach. It's one of their most important times in their college, in their calendar year. It's 2 months in the summer where they disciple the students. You know, they usually took them to a beach or somewhere like where they can have a job there, and they're also being disciple. You know, for 2 months. You know, learn to share their faith. All that. It's a great time. So they invited me, and I that's when I was getting back in touch with Luis. You know, that's when Luis and I reconnected because we knew each other since we were kids, but we reconnected later on in life. And I tell him like, man, I'm getting to know this campus outreach ministry, and like, they invited me to this thing. Do you want to come? And I always said, man, Luis is our honorary campus outreach staff. Like, he's as much as campus outreach staff as anyone, you know? And so he was there from the beginning. And so he came with me, and both of us, we went to the summer project with campus outreach in Orlando. That's where they were having it. And so we went to the best, you know, campus outreach summer project. They did it in this hotel, which was like really cool. and the students had curfew. You know, they had to be in bed by 11, and the staff, you know, they were tired, and, you know, they went to bed. Right. But we were neither students or staff. We were there to learn. And so when everybody went to bed, Luis and I were going to the jacuzzi that it was there. And we just, you know, stay there. And one night, we stayed until 3 a.m. talking and dreaming and saying, man, wouldn't it be nice?
That's amazing.
Wouldn't it be cool that one day we can have in Monterrey a ministry like this and a church that is funneling those students? We were like, that would be amazing. And it was the two of us in a hot tub just dreaming.
That's incredible.
Fast forward 7 years later, it took a lot. You know, it's like right now I'm gonna tell the story of like a lot of the good things that is happening, but it took years, at least 7 years. You know,
7 years.
Where, you know, we both in our own ways, you know, start working that dream together. And then in 2021, when I received the team and I knew that we were going to start campus outreach with a full team and everything, we also decided we partnered with this other church. Our mother church is San Pedro Church, where you were part of. That's when we met. Yep. And when we partnered with them, we also wanted to have a church that was near campus that can funnel these students. So San Pedro helped us plant the church as our mother church. That's where Luis was working. And so at that time, Andres is the pastor of the church. Luis, our supervisors, and I, we talked, and we were like, man, we also going to plant a church. We're not just going to plant a campus outreach, but we're also going to help plant a church. So at that time, Luis and I talking, we were like, man, let's do this. We start dreaming, we start planning. And in 2022, we officially planted Iglesia Núcleo, where Luis is the church planting pastor, and I'm a co-pastor with him. My focus is campus outreach. You know, that's my main job, and that's where I focus. We have a lot of students, so that's, you know, a lot of people to pastor there. But yeah, we love the local church. We love to be under the local church. And if you ask me, what is one of the key differences from your campus outreach to other campus outreaches? We're all under the local church, all of us. But ours has a particularity that started the church alongside the ministry. And so our DNA and our focus is pretty tight, to the point where sometimes our students, they don't even know what campus outreach is. They know Núcleo. They know the church. I talk with a lot of friends in the, you know, campus outreach in the UK, it's in Australia, in Thailand, and in all those places, it's always hard, you know, in most places outside the US, even here right now, but like to bring students right away to church, you know, like you're trying to evangelize. It's hard, you know, you got to go through a process. In our case, it's a little bit faster, you know, it's not that complicated. It's hard, but it's not that complicated. And the reason is because both our ministry and the church are working together to the point where the students that we're reaching, they're not thinking like, oh, man, I don't know if I should go to church. They're like, oh, the church, the pastor, the preaching, they're the same guy that is discipling me here. He's trying to reach, you know, it's like, and so that has helped us a lot, and that has show some fruit, and we're just seeing both the church and the ministry growing alongside.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, I remember studying the process and see you guys running it. It was amazing. Kind of sad that, so you started the church September 2022. I moved up here August 2022.
Oh man.
Like I missed it by a month. But anyway, it was great to walk along with you guys, and the team of Campus Outreach is awesome. So tell us a couple stories. I think we have time for a couple stories of how you've seen the Holy Spirit work in the campus. Tell us about a couple stories of salvation from people that went from zero, investigating the faith, and then believing in Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Man, you gotta choose.
No, you gotta choose. I know.
Yeah, I know. That's a good problem to have. Well, I can tell you one. He's like, you know him actually. He and I can say his name because I've asked. I used his name before, and so it's okay. His name is Martin, and he's from Ecuador. He was. He's a guy that came to Tech, and he was as born in a Christian church, which is still uncommon, but like he was born there, but he wasn't a Christian. And then when he came to Tech, like he just was the typical Tech student, partying, making good grades and all of that, but like having a crazy life, and definitely not like living up to the standards of like what he was claiming. And so Luis is actually the one that started discipling him and started like sharing with him. Pandemic hits,
they met just by going like to the campus of a Tech.
This was they actually met at San Pedro Church because their parents were like, hey man, like you go to Tech, but you have to find a church. And he was like, all right. And so they took it to San Pedro, and he met Luis there. Okay. But he's a Tech student, or was a Tech student. Right. And so he goes there, and so he comes back. Pandemic hit, he has to go back to Ecuador. Right. A lot of things in his life happen, and so he comes back and start sharing the gospel with him, discipling him, and he comes in, man, like I think I just became a Christian not too long ago. As many things in my life happened, I became a Christian, and so at that time I took him in. I started discipling him. This was 2022, I think, 2021, 2022. And I started discipling him, walking alongside him. There's a fight back home of who is my beloved disciple, but he's definitely there. Someone I walk with for several years, and I just start seeing his life change. I start like meeting with him, reading the Word with him, and like I said, you see our lives, our friendships, and it goes from, sometimes we go and play tennis together, it's super fun, and other times, we're sharing our deepest things, together. And walking alongside each other. So I started discipling him for a few years, and I start seeing his growth and start sharing with others. And little by little, I start like, okay, man, I think you should go and share with this person. This person new. He's coming to our monthly event. You should get a coffee with him. So start pushing him. Fast forward now, he graduated, I think, a year ago. And Martin is leading, if I remember correctly, at least 2, if not 3 different like discipleship groups. Some of them are even some of our Tech students. So he's still graduating, and he's still like helping us, because we have that integration, the church and the ministry. He's reaching out to his colleagues, where he works, and he's in charge of our mercy ministry. Nucleo, yeah. So you got a guy who from zero, from like I think I just became a Christian, to now he is discipling others in his job, sharing his faith, and serving, the church, and leading the church, And when I saw that, and then also I realized, man, this guy it's a deep thinker, and I think he has some communication ability. So he's also he also helped us preaching in our monthly events, where we do with students. And so I realized, man, like this is where we're going. This is what we're doing. This, it's like it's this kind of man. It's the man that they're doing. They're just multiplying their lives.
Do you find any pushback from Tech? Do you find any? Persecution is not the word, but Mexico being a Catholic country, and then you trying to reach the campus, the university with the gospel. Do you have any conflicts with the authorities or teachers?
Yeah, Tech is technically, like as a private school, is not. State school a little bit harder when it comes to like having official religious group inside. Private school, it just depends on private school. Tech historically has one Catholic ministry
Okay.
But other than that, there's no register
Okay.
Christian organization. And then a lot of other groups like LGBTQ and all of that, like they start popping and they start demanding, we want to be a part of like student organization. So when they get that green light, tech realizes, well, now I got to give green light to everybody.
Right.
And so for the first time, you can have student organizations that are not just Catholic inside campus.
All right.
And so, in theory, we could do it. We could go and become an official student organization. However, and this, I'm not going into all the details, but after talking to the administration and the people in charge of that, we realized, you know what? For what we're doing, we don't need to be an official registered organization. That's probably going to bring us more pushback, and we've seen it.
Okay.
There's a guy, he's a professor at Tech, and, Tech is, Tech is this all money, all business, kind of school. But they were like, well, we need to look at the human part of this too. And so they created a building, which is like for meditation and Eastern spirituality, basically.
Right.
Yes, but they say, but it's for all religions.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not true, because you can be an Eastern, you can do meditation, yoga, Buddhist, and they're like, yes, please come.
Right.
Catholics, because they want have a good relationship, they go the priest and share.
Right.
So my friend, he's a Christian, and he's like, man, I want, to bring this person to give a talk on what is the gospel. He faced so much opposition.
There you go.
So much. He couldn't do it, and so I think at the end they give him permission, but it was so hard. It was just so hard. So we realized, man, you know what? The best way to be here is, we're there with students.
You enroll as students.
Yeah.
You enroll as students. You take some classes, and then you do what you do.
Yeah. And, we're open about it. We tell them, we work with this church. Like, we're not like, oh, man, we're here lying. Like, what we do, it's just a way of getting to campus and getting,
Do you have any meetings in the campus? Like any official meetings with a classroom and in the...
Yeah, we could. We haven't got to the point in which, like, we take a classroom. And that's because so all of our staff, we work and live near the campus. Like, we all live walking distance or like very, very close. And so what we try to do is we use the campus to meet, to fish. We use obviously the fisher, go and make fisher. You'll become fishermen. So we're going fish on campus. But when we go and try to like take them, we usually invite them to our house. Like our houses are very important. And so we have the ministry house, and that's usually where we do our monthly meetings. But on campus, what we do is we do have some D groups there, some smaller, like 3-4 people. D groups happen on campus. We do one thing called Picnic Friday. So where we we have a picnic in campus outside. And so we invite people to meet. But yeah, usually we don't do
official.
Although we could. We just haven't had the need to do it so far. Yeah.
All right. Well, besides God providing more volunteers and a guy from Mexico City, how else can we pray for campus outreach and for you and for Núcleo?
Church? Thank God we've been growing. I think we have a movement around 60 students involved. A lot of them never heard the gospel or just start to grow. And then we have been having for the past year or so a group of student leaders, around 10 of them who are like, not only are they Christians now, but they're sharing their faith and discipling others. However, thank God, and this is a good problem to have, but our movement is starting to grow. And when Jesus said, the harvest is plentiful, the laborers are few, I used to read that as, we need more pastors, which is true. But now I'm seeing, no. He wasn't talking about pastors. He was talking about people. He's talking about churchgoers, who is like, we need more people who are laymen, who are going to be whatever engineers, but they are discipling others. Right. And we're starting to feel that, there's a lot of new people coming, and we feel sometimes the overwhelmness of like, who is going to go to them? We need more mature people.
Who's going to disciple all of these
So
students?
pray that these people that we've been reaching become mature disciples.
Become disciple makers.
Yes. Yeah. So, and Jesus says, what you should do is pray to the Lord of the harvest.
Right.
And so pray for us, pray to the Lord of the harvest that he keeps sending not just staff, not just pastors, but they become the next disciplers that we're going to disciple others. So that would be a prayer. And then another for our ministry is thank God we also are at maximum capacity as far as like staff for our campus. 8 people, it's more than enough for the campus that we're at. And so we're like, okay, we want to be good stewards of what the Lord has given us. What's God calling us in the next 2 years? And we're having those conversations now, and we're thinking, man, the Lord might be calling us to another campus in the city.
Right.
And so we're having those conversations, and that will mean a lot of other things. So please pray for that. Pray for wisdom, and we know how to be faithful stewards, but also wise, when to do it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thanks, Nathan.